Record, this is the people of the state of Colorado versus James Egan Holmes, case number 12CR-1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorney and the prosecutors are present as well. Are you ready to proceed, Ms. McGuire?
Yes, Your Honor. With the court's permission, we'd like to attempt to play that video again. We tested it over break and weren't able to get some sound. So if we could play Caleb Medley's video, please.
Yes. Because I haven't been through it. But while it's okay to express the suffering and the pain and the hurt, I don't think it's appropriate to speculate. Now, if somebody has specific evidence that they want to present to the court, that's different. But we had 24 people who are citizens of the community who agreed to make a huge sacrifice to serve on the jury. 12 of those ended up deliberating. I don't have any basis in front of me or any reason that anyone has presented to support that there was deception by anyone. If somebody has information that they would like to present to me, specific information, not speculation or conjecture, then present it. But otherwise, I am not going to allow people to criticize this jury. That's unfair and that's improper. As far as I know, this jury listened to the evidence and followed my instructions. The fact that they could not agree on a death sentence doesn't mean that there was a juror who was deceptive or that there was a juror who came into the process and perjured herself because she wanted to vote for a life sentence. That's a huge leap. And I'm not going to allow that type of criticism to be uttered without evidence. I think that's improper. That's a very serious accusation. And I think it's unfair to the jurors. There have been jurors present here today. There's still one that I see in the back. And the least we can do is to be grateful for their willingness to do what they did, to give us their time. There were a lot of people who came to the courtroom during jury selection who were not willing to serve. And these folks were willing to give us their time and to do this very, very difficult task. I can't imagine a tougher case to be a juror on. I mean, in terms of how much time they gave us, in terms of the graphic images they had to see, in terms of the emotional testimony they had to hear. This was a difficult task, and there's no reason to believe that anyone on the jury was deceptive or that anyone did anything improper. All right, Ms. McGuire, call your next witness, please. Ms. Pearson.
Your Honor, I'm going to read a statement from Heather Dearman. It's Heatherdearman, and she is a cousin of Ashley Mosier and Veronica Mosier Sullivan. Not one soul who knows what happened to Ashley can ever come close to experiencing what she did. No one should have to. Losing a beautiful, sweet, innocent 6-year-old daughter, the hope and the joy of looking forward to becoming a mother for the second time, and on top of all of that, being told you are paralyzed while still grieving over the loss of your father just a few weeks earlier. And this happened. It happened to the sweetest, gentlest, most humble mother that I know. All of this at the hands of one person who chose hate instead of love and calculated a most horrific, devastating, and evil crime. Enough said. That should say it all. I could end here. And I found myself conflicted about even saying anything else, because what could be worse? Nothing. But I wanted to make sure that people consider that this crime affected more lives than the ones of those in the theater. I am a City of Aurora employee who works with the heroic police officers and firefighters on a daily basis. And I know we have all seen the effect it had on them. I think about 720 every time I walk into my city building and every time I see a uniformed officer. I am also a citizen of Aurora and have encountered firsthand the aftermath it had on our community and our reputation. My husband and I are raising our 5 beautiful children in Aurora, and we are still experiencing the fallout of this crime with them. I had never taken for granted the joy and love my children bring into my life. The impact of July 20th only strengthened that, but it also caused seemingly irreconcilable thoughts of survivor's guilt for still having my blessings, while Ashley had a lifetime of feeling the loss of hers. My youngest daughter was 5 years old when it happened. Veronica was 6. For the longest time, I could not fully enjoy milestone moments with her because I would cry thinking about what Ashley was missing out on. The first day of school, mother-daughter breakfasts, artwork so lovingly made by her hand. I also found myself feeling another kind of guilt that I was not truly being present with my young daughter and enjoying those moments with her. What kind of parent was I? Ever since the shooting, she often talks to me about her worries of me dying. Like most young children, she tells me how much she loves me every night, but 4 times in a row, making sure to say it again as I am walking out the door, in a clingy, worrisome voice, almost like she's scared that she won't see me in the morning. No child should have that worry. This year, she asked if she could speak at the vigil, and that's when I truly realized how deeply it touched her. The first words she spoke were, "Ever since the shooting, I have been hearing about people's feelings." A 7-year-old child having the composure to speak in front of a huge crowd and to say such a grown-up phrase that no child should ever have to say hit me like a rock. I also have a 26-year-old daughter who considers Ashley her best friend, an 18 and 17-year-old daughter, and a 14-year-old son. Each struggled with this tragedy in their own way and in different directions. All of them have always had kind, caring, and loving hearts, but the tear that this crime left in them is massive. I still can't reconcile within myself that maybe I intensified the despair that this tragedy put forth by letting it consume me from the beginning. Somehow, I may have been making it more important than my own husband and a bigger issue for my children than it should have been. But how could I not? I contribute the enormous magnitude of emotional trauma that my family and I are going through, mostly to the fact that this crime was so unfathomable and large scale, and that the whole world was watching. The never-ending media coverage added a whole other level of indescribable anxiety to me, my husband, my children, and my extended family. It was unprecedented. How do we help? How do we act? How do we feel? Relationships were tested, some broken. We had to wait until October to pay our respects to Veronica. It was crushing to hold on to letting go for 3 long months, while at the same time praying for a miracle for Ashley and constantly rallying together to support her. During those 3 months, I was doing my best to keep my children positive. I urged them to believe that the world is safe and ultimately good. I tried to convince them that they should not live in fear. After all, this crime is rare. Every parent wants their children to live happy, healthy lives and to believe that they can. And then, shortly after surviving the grief from the funeral of a child, Newtown. I feel like I had lied to my children. It was July all over again. The same feelings resurfaced for us all. We were set back in our progress. The nightmares, the being afraid to go to school or out in public places hit them hard. Just like me, they battled with feeling guilty to be feeling hurt so deep. And it hasn't stopped since then, both the setbacks and the tragic events. These emotions are normal, but my heart bleeds for them that they have to feel so much torment each time. And the pain wouldn't be as deep had their 6-year-old cousin not been taken in such a cruel way. It took a while, until late last year actually, for me and my children to give ourselves the grace to know that we deserved and needed therapy to process all of this so that the level of hurt could be lessened. But none of my children will ever look at the world in the same way that they did before 7/20, and I will never stop questioning if I am doing the best that I can as a parent. But at least I still get to be a parent to my children. That privilege was stolen from Ashley. Heather Dearman.
Thank you. Mr. Orman?
This is a victim impact statement from Rita Lambert, and she calls herself the mother of Ashley Mosier, Veronica Mosier Sullivan, and baby Mosier. Just shy of 18, my daughter Ashley told me she was pregnant. As this type of surprising news comes to any mother, I was taken aback, but was soon ecstatic knowing that I was going to be a grandmother. Ashley mostly raised Veronica by herself, and I will always say that they grew up together. In comparing their baby and toddler pictures, Veronica was the spitting image of Ashley, but where Ashley was and is more reserved, Veronica had extra energy to spare. They had such fun together, giggling at silly things, just like little girls. Ashley took her everywhere she went. I don't think she went more than 24 hours at a time without Veronica by her side. 6-year-old Veronica was always glowing with life. She wanted to try everything and asked questions constantly and made friends wherever she went. She brought such joy to our home, her grandpa's home, and anyone else's home she was in. You definitely knew Veronica was around, as her peal of laughter could be heard every so often, anywhere she went. She was so curious about things, asking thoughtful questions. You could see the look in her eye when processing the answer that she truly wanted to understand and soak up the information. She wanted to experience everything and anything, as her life was about all fun and exciting things she could do and the people she could spend time with. She had such a large personality, you could feel her energy as she walked into a room. She was smart, too. Not only good in school, but she understood adult conversations, sometimes much to our chagrin, and even asked questions that were applicable. She could also pick up on people's emotions and would be empathetic and consoling. I always thought she would be a great lawyer, though as the justification she came up with, she made the wrong choice. When she made the wrong choice, were pretty amazing and well thought out. You just had to laugh at some of them, as sometimes they were pretty logical. The impact Veronica had on her parents, her grandparents, extended family and friends was huge and will always have to last us a lifetime. We will lovingly be reminded of her energy every time we see pictures of or think of her and smile. But I not only lost my daughter's daughter, but another grandchild, and a part of my child as she sits confined to a wheelchair because someone decided that their life was more important than these 3 most innocent and genuine children. There is a vast, open wound in my heart every time I think about Veronica, and I pray that she didn't suffer as she fell from 4 bullets ripping the life out of her. And I'm reminded every time I see my beautiful daughter Ashley sitting in her wheelchair that her life was turned completely upside down and almost lost. When that bullet lodged in her spine, she not only lost her mobility, but lost part of herself and the most important person in her life that night, Veronica. And I've cried pools of tears, still experiencing waves of anger, of sadness, and of grief at the stupidity of how all our lives were changed. And I wonder how this could be happening to us, to Ashley. She doesn't deserve a life in a wheelchair or a motherless life, and I don't deserve not being a grandmother anymore. Every single day I think of Veronica and of my unborn grandchild. My thoughts wander several times a day to Ashley and how I wish things were different and easier for her. How I pray that I could take some of Ashley's pain away, even with so much of my own. I would gladly take some of hers so she could get a moment of peace. Rita Lambert, mother of Ashley Mosier, grandmother of Veronica Mosier, and baby Mosier.
Thank you. Mr. Proctor.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'm going to read a victim impact statement, and I wanted to make an argument at the end of all the statements that we've provided. But if the court would permit me to take an issue out of order only because it's recently come up and it invoked me in some way, I'd appreciate that.
Go ahead.
First off, I don't have any clue what these victims are going through, and Mr. Sullivan as well. And for that, I consider myself blessed. And I understand that there are those who are not only unhappy with the outcome, but have found reason to question perhaps how that outcome came about. I am not one of those people, and I want to make it clear here on the record that while I have never predetermined what action I would take on a speculative set of facts that have never been brought before me, what I was predetermined to do, and this was the conversation I had with Mr. Sullivan, was that I was predetermined never to question the outcome of the jury, even if it was one with which I disagreed. Had that jury come back unanimously in favor of the outcome that I pursued, I would have fully expected people to accept that verdict, and I would have rebuffed criticism of the motives that would have led the jury to that outcome. And I do the same here, even if it's the outcome that I did not think was justice. I have nothing but respect for these jurors, all of them, all the ones, and to some extent, even the alternates, more so than the deliberators, for what they were asked to endure. And I've said this publicly, and I will continue to say this. They were asked to do something that no one else in this process was asked to do. They were asked to endure all of this, to take all this in, and to share it with no one. I don't know what that's like. I had these folks at the table. I had our victim advocates. I had my wife, my kids. We could talk about anything and everything. They could not. This court instructed the jury 10 times at least in the instructions that this was a matter of individual reason, moral judgment. I have every confidence that they all went into that believing and honoring those words, and that this outcome was the product of exactly that. Without taking anything away from the pain of Mr. Sullivan or the concerns that he or others may have, I just want to make it clear that as the district attorney in this jurisdiction, I do not share those thoughts.
I appreciate you saying that. There was one other thing that I would add to what we asked the jury to do that none of us had to do, and that is make the decisions that they made. They have made arguments, both sides, but ultimately, you were not making the decision, the jury was, and only the jurors were asked to do that. So in addition to the time that we requested from them, in addition to the emotional testimony they had to hear, in addition to the graphic images they saw, in addition to all the things they endured without talking to anyone about what they were experiencing in the courtroom, not even with each other, they had to make decisions along the way that are difficult decisions to make, and especially at the very end, the very last decision. And they were the only ones in this room that were asked to do that, and they were the only ones who had to do that. And that is a difficult thing, but I very much appreciate your comments.
Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. This is a victim impact statement from Jim Lambert, the step-grandfather of Veronica Mosher Sullivan, and I imagine everyone remembers Veronica, but she was the 6-year-old girl that he murdered by shooting 4 times with an assault rifle. There's a picture. Yeah, you got that. Here is a picture of Veronica and how we still picture her in our hearts and minds. She was outgoing, smart, loving, always happy, loved to play and read. She also loved to smile and loved chocolate cake and ice cream, as well as watching SpongeBob SquarePants and Mickey Mouse. She had an amazing future ahead of her, and she was robbed of a beautiful life. We all were robbed of seeing her grow up. She was our future, the best and brightest. She wanted to be a lawyer, doctor, princess, teacher, or a rock star. She could have been any of these and more. Veronica was trusting and honest and adored her mother, grandmother, family, and friends. She always brightened the room wherever she went. She loved life, pillow fights, exploring in the woods, and her smile was brighter than the sun. She could melt anyone's heart. She melted mine. She was a major piece of all our hearts and lives, and now she's gone forever, and our lives will never be the same. Our hearts are broken and will never truly be healed. Veronica's grandmother, my wife, was very close to Veronica, and she has not been the same since this useless tragedy happened. My wife has the biggest heart out of anyone I have ever known, and now a big piece of her heart, Veronica, is gone. Veronica can never be replaced, and my wife and stepdaughter Ashley will never be the same, as will any of us. Jim Lambert, Veronica's step-grandfather.
Thank you. Mr. Edson?
Your Honor, thank you. I have a victim impact statement from John Hook, H-O-O-K, grandfather of Jesse Childress, if I may.
You may.
This victim impact statement is entitled Jesse Childress and the Traitor, T-R-A-I-T-O-R. Jesse Childress died a cyber warrior hero at the hands of a traitor. He served his country as a cyber systems operator with the 310th Space Wing and an honored airman staff sergeant who helped fellow soldiers. The traitor killed 12 people and wounded 70 others to focus on improving his own self-worth. Jesse came from a long line of patriotic warriors. His great-grandfather served in France during World War I as a flight engineer. His grandfather was a Cold War warrior in France in the late 50s. His mother serves as an early childhood educator at Edwards Air Force Base. His two brothers are in the United States Army and United States Air Force. The traitor dropped out of graduate school. My first grandchild had a promising career in the Air Force and was working on a college degree with the GI Bill. He bought a townhouse in preparation for a future family. Jesse was honored as a Soldier of the Month at his base because he helped others and loved team sports. We were so proud of him. He died a hero's death when he covered his first sergeant and wife, as well as the female airmen he was training. The traitor shot Jesse in the back and destroyed our future with him. Jesse faced failure in school and sports along with many successes. He worked hard to improve himself during Army and Air Force service and overcame adversity. The traitor rejected our country that supported his education, the military who protected him, and his family who loved him by this horrendous carnage. He prepared with a selfish mindset. He sacrificed Jesse Childress and 11 others needlessly. Sincerely, Grandpa John.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, Ashley Mosier is here today in the audience, and she asked that I play a brief clip of Veronica's third birthday.
You may.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. This is the statement of Ashley Mosier. Veronica. Veronica was my life and the reason I lived. It's hard to know where to begin. I loved having someone to take care of and a reason to want to get up every day and a reason to want to go to work and to go to school because I wanted to do everything I could to provide for my daughter and to work for a better future for myself and for Veronica. Not waking up to her every morning, not hearing her laugh, not hugging her, not helping her get ready for the day is incredibly hard, and it never gets any easier. I had Veronica when I was 18 years old, and we struggled financially our entire lives. We moved a lot, we didn't have a lot of money, and now I finally have a stable place to live, but it's not a home because Veronica was my home. Veronica was such a happy, positive person, and she brought so much joy into the world and brought happiness to the lives of everyone she met. You could not help but to remember Veronica, even if you only met her once. I know people won't believe me, and some people think that you only start to remember positive things about people once they die. But honestly, it's the truth. I can't even remember a single time Veronica ever complained about a single thing in her entire life. Veronica was so happy, in fact, that one time I brought her to a therapist because I thought there had to be something wrong with her because she was so excessively happy. The therapist noted that she was a child who was a little hyper and had lots of energy, but the therapist assured me that I was just very lucky because otherwise Veronica was such a happy and content child. In the months leading up to the shooting, my dad was fighting a battle with cancer. I spent many of those months leading up to the shooting taking care of my dying father. Sadly, my dad passed away on May 20th, 2012, 2 months before the shooting. My dad's funeral was the day of Veronica's kindergarten graduation. Because I was attending my father's funeral, I was not able to attend Veronica's graduation, not knowing at the time that Veronica would never have another graduation for me to attend. I'll never know what career Veronica would have chosen when she grew up, and I don't know exactly how she would have contributed to the world, but I do know that she never would have hurt anyone, and she never would have caused the type of pain that the defendant has caused to thousands. Me. After I learned that Veronica was murdered and that my unborn baby was murdered, the hardest thing for me was coming to terms with the fact that I may never be able to be a mother again. I was about to be a mother of 2 children, and now I don't know if I can ever have kids again. My heart is broken at the thought of never being a mother again. It was my entire identity. Ironically, the due date for my unborn baby was my deceased father's birthday, and I was hoping to have a baby boy and hoping to have another way to celebrate life on my father's birthday every year. That too was stolen from me by the defendant. After realizing that I would never be a mother again, the next hardest thing was finding out that I was a quadriplegic and that I might never be able to move my arms or legs again. I spent 6 months at hospitals and at Craig Rehabilitation Center drowning in the grief of Veronica's murder and my unborn baby's murder, and I also had to figure out a way to regain my physical strength in the process. We had to postpone Veronica's funeral for several months because I was not physically strong enough to even sit up long enough in a wheelchair to attend the funeral. It's an awful feeling to know that you are not physically strong enough to bury your little girl. Because of my paralysis, the months of rehabilitation were incredibly hard. I had to relearn how to do everything, from the normal tasks like brushing my teeth, to combing my hair, to eating, to feeding myself. And then I had to learn new things, like learning how to transform myself from a wheelchair to a bed at night by myself. It was almost a year after the shooting before I could do that by myself. And to this day, I have to have someone spot me while I do the transfer so I don't fall on the ground with no one to help me. Also, when you're paralyzed, it completely strips away your independence, and it completely is demoralizing and embarrassing in several respects. For 1 year, I had an external urine bag, exposing my urine to the world at all times. Since then, I had a surgery that allows me to self-catheterize myself, but this device, called a stoma, leaks all the time, and because of the leaking, I have urine on my clothes daily. During the surgery, they used part of my intestines to create a pathway for the opening for the stoma. And because of that, I constantly get urinary tract infections. And because I'm paralyzed, I cannot tell from the pain that the infections are getting really bad. And I constantly end up back in the hospital from these infections. In fact, I was just back in the hospital last week. One of the most embarrassing things about being paralyzed is that I need to have a nurse or someone stimulate my anus manually in order to relieve my bowels every morning. I have to have someone bathe my genitals. I have to ask to have my legs shaved. Being stripped of your privacy and dignity in these ways is something no one should ever have to experience. It takes 3 hours every morning with my CNA to do my bowel program, shower, and get dressed just to leave the house. It's extremely hard to make morning appointments, making things like getting to court in the morning to attend trial extremely difficult because of this 3-hour routine I have each and every morning. Luckily, after years of hard work and physical therapy, I was able to regain the use of my arms. However, I still don't have control of my stomach muscles, so when I drop things, it's generally impossible for me to get them. And I can't even do simple tasks like putting my hair in a ponytail because I simply don't have the core strength to keep my body upright. Also, I have extreme nerve pain in my legs. It doesn't seem fair that I am paralyzed and yet also have to be in physical pain every day. The only time the pain subsides is when I go swimming. The grief and the trauma alone make it really hard for me to want to get up every morning, especially knowing that I have a 3-hour routine, and that makes it more difficult. And because I always need help, I don't get to be alone when I want to be alone. A 28-year-old woman should get to be alone in the morning if she wants to be. Also, there are many things that I used to love to do that I don't get to do anymore. I grew up as a ballerina. I loved to dance, and that was taken away from me by the defendant. I also used to love to go to outdoor festivals with Veronica. Not only can I not go to them anymore, but it's extremely difficult to navigate through groups of people in a wheelchair when I do decide to go anywhere. One of the hardest things is that it's so hard for me to be around children now. Because of this, I avoid children in my own family, and I haven't seen my little cousins or been able to participate in many family functions because it's too hard for me to be around little kids. I feel guilty about this, and it eats me up inside, but I just know that it's something I can't do at this time. After I left the hospital 6 months after the shooting, I was having a lot of memory issues. Craig Hospital had me come back to test me for brain injuries. Because of the shooting, I have cognitive issues that I never had before. The hospital staff believe that I sustained the injuries during the time I was unconscious after the shooting when my brain was deprived of oxygen. I have trouble concentrating and focusing. Adult Protective Services was so concerned about me that they tried to put me in a senior living center. I had to prove to them that I had enough family and friends with me at all times so that they did not place me in a home for invalids and strip me of the little independence I had left. I was on a summer break from school during July 20th of 2012. I was supposed to start LPN, or Licensed Practical Nurse School, in August of 2012. Because of my injuries, I could not go to school. I tried to go back to school and regain my life too early during the fall of 2013. However, it was too hard for me physically, emotionally, and intellectually at the time. I thought the reason I had a hard time focusing in school was because I was on so much pain medicine for the nerve pain in my legs. So I fought long and hard to stop taking pain medicine in the hopes that it would make concentrating in school easier. It turned out, however, that it was the cognitive issues from the shooting that was making school much harder for me. I used to be a straight A student. Now, it takes me 5 times as long to study and retain information for school. Your Honor, for me, the only thing that would have even come close to getting justice for Veronica would have been if the defendant would have been sentenced to the death penalty, or if he could have been forced to live as a quadriplegic, a sentence he gave to me and Stefan and Caleb, or if the defendant could have been shot 4 times, like he shot Veronica. I know that Your Honor cannot sentence the defendant to those things, but I would ask you to think about how the defendant has altered the course of the lives of thousands by his evil, selfish actions, and sentence him to the maximum possible penalty you can under the law. Thank you very much, Ashley Mosher.
All right, thank you. It's 5:05, so let's go ahead and adjourn. In terms of the, for scheduling purposes, Ms. Titch-McGuire, approximately how many more folks are you anticipating wishing to address the court?
I think we have approximately 40 more, Your Honor.
Okay, so we'll plan for all day tomorrow, and then we'll probably have counsel's comments on Wednesday, and then my sentence on Wednesday as well. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, anything else at this time on behalf of the people before we break for the day?
No, sir.
Mr. Proctor? No? Mr. King?
No, no.
All right, the court will be in recess. Thank you.
Please rise.